you will find that the astral plane is closest to the physical plane and is a great impediment to reaching and objectively analyzing that which resides on the mental plane. And so, the primary task of those entering the path of evolution is to overcome emotional reactions. And I believe that in the future, others of our committee will be instructing for various ways to accomplish this. But set your minds to it, contemplate it, think about it. See if you can neutralize your emotional reactions, be it fear, anger, or even what is termed in this society as positive emotions, what is classified as love or caring, because any great emotion serves as a weight. There is a difference between caring and the emotion that embroils many of the people of this society, and that we will go into in more detail at a later time. But you must think about emotions. They are neither inherently bad or good, but they serve as a weight, as a magnetic influence to draw you back to the physical plane. And if they are so strongly ingrained, they will keep you on a low level when you make the death transition. And you can wander around in a fog for a long time. The mental plane is comprised of events that have shaped attitudes and beliefs. These attitudes and beliefs color your views of reality, and they can serve as impediments to your growth, impediments to your evolution. That will also be gone into in more detail at a later time, when we deal with these issues in more detail. And so that is the follow-up to the one phase of the discussion presented the last time by Lodge. Formulate your questions. We will design a system whereby we can attend to them. 'Tis best that you write them down, and we will perhaps designate one individual to ask them, and that way you will not have to be concerned about when to speak or when not to speak. And with that, I bid you a good evening. Although the energies are quite flowing tonight, in startling contrast to the way they were the last time, but we feel that that is sufficient for you to think about. And now the next part, Doyle here. Tonight, we shall continue our discussion of the rock. As you will recall, the rock symbolizes the encasements that surround the consciousness or the entity. In the near future, another member of our committee shall give a report on the history of humanity on this planet that will help you to understand the nature of karma. Tonight, I would like to elaborate a bit upon what was mentioned in the last transmission. An important rule to remember is that karma is not a law as such. Karma is a reaction. 'Tis a reaction to forces that are set in motion on the astral and mental planes, and it is played about physically. Thus, there are more efficient ways to advance on the physical plane. The goal, that which is taught by the so-called adepts, the so-called masters, is to be in control of every phase of existence. For each reaction that is eliminated, that much more control is assumed by the incarnating spirit. And as has been mentioned in the past, the gaining of this control is referred to as the path. One of the greatest obstacles to overcome on the physical, astral, and mental planes is the attraction of these various reaction patterns due to familiarity. In other words, they have become habits, and as with habits that you acquire on the physical plane, they require a great deal of effort and perseverance to overcome. And so, one of the first steps in assuming the path of evolution is to determine why you want to keep these regressive habits, because yes, you are maintaining them, and you are feeding them. Why? These reactions, as with anything that is uncontrolled, are not always predictable. If you liken it to a chemical reaction, you put various combinations of the chemicals together to produce the end result. However, the end result is not always consistent due to the many variables. Let us suppose you could control the weight of a simple reaction with 2 elements. You mix these compounds and you get your end result. But your end result will always vary because of the quality or purity of the compounds that you are mixing for the reaction. When you multiply this uncertainty factor by 1,000, you can see why many entities go astray on the physical plane. There are too many variables in these reactions. And it is only by eliminating as many reactions as possible that one can take charge of his existence and a concomitant responsibility for the existence and make progress on the path back to the source. Although your higher self has many tentacles, many fragments of consciousness into the physical plane simultaneously, each individual consciousness here is a unique unit. You can look upon it as a container that is constantly being added to. And it is a unique container that is the sum total of its contents. And you, the consciousness, are responsible for the contents of you, the container. And so the items that are put in there, be it from an internal or external source, are your responsibility. 'Tis better to monitor the contents, alter the contents, to your best outcome, as opposed to letting all sorts of items accumulate in your container. And this random accumulation of items fits in the category of karmic reactions. So the first step of anyone on the path back to your source origin is the examination of the contents of your container and controlling future input into that container, because you do have a choice if you would but consciously exercise it. 'Tis not an easy task to examine the container, because as you stand at the edge of the container, it looks like a vast ocean due to countless eons of collection. However, there are those entities that have incarnated into this plane whose task is to help you examine efficiently and effectively the contents of this vast ocean by passing the trivia and focusing in on the most impactful. And so the transmutation of the contents of these containers from the material to the spiritual results in breaking the cycle of incarnation. You're chipping away the rock to allow the spirit to float free in its upward striving to the source of origin. And so we've used two analogies to represent the plight of the entity on the physical plane: the rock that is constantly adding mass to its overall weight, and the container filled with the accumulation of countless eons. With the container, the karmic entrapments are heavy and the spiritual portions are light. Using the container example, you are in a sense transforming the contents to a higher vibration, and as you do so, you pump it out to a higher level. And when you have the container empty, your essence resides on the higher planes. Obviously, this is easier to do when you control the amount of flow into the container. Decide what needs to be put in there and what needs to be excluded. The nature of personal reality is quite an abstract concept for human consciousness to comprehend. Hence the difficulty in relaying the concepts down through the ages and the many analogies that have been used by many different spirits and many different mediums. In summation, you need to transform the material into the spiritual. The material is comprised of the matter of the astral and mental planes. As long as you have heavy accumulations on those planes, it will inevitably drag you back to the physical. The only way to clean off those planes, so to speak, is from the bottom up while you are in the physical, because from the physical or bottom level, the capacity exists to transform and transmute the accumulations on those planes, just as those planes in particular weigh upon and cause the reactions on the physical plane. This is why it is easier for a group of physical beings to help an entity that is earthbound. From our side of existence, they cannot see us, but they can easily look down and see that which is below them, and they respond to it in a more noticeable manner. We shall continue this discussion on the nature of personal reality. We shall attempt to put it into terms that are easily understandable to your consciousness. We feel that it will be beneficial for the story of the origins of life on this planet to be presented, and in that way you can more easily understand what you have to do to enter onto the path of evolution. the types of areas that you need to examine to begin the transformation process, and from the material to the spiritual. Again, I would say that questions are in order, and you need to discuss it among yourselves, for we feel that by answering specific questions, you can better understand, and through understanding, make progress. And so with that, we shall terminate this evening's transmissions and begin making efforts for the next one. If it flows as we anticipate, we shall have a member of the hierarchy discuss the origins of consciousness on and in the planet Earth. And with that, I bid you a good evening.